I was an atheist my entire adult life. I never went to church as a kid and never read or was taught the Bible. I thought none of it was true because it didn't make any sense to me. In my mind, there was just no proof of it. I couldn't touch it, I couldn't taste it, and I couldn't see any of it.
And already I can sense the straw. You do realise that evidence is not simply reduced down to touch, taste and sight, right? We can't touch, taste or see radiation, for example. So to overcome this limitation, we develop tools which can measure its effects, such as the Geiger counter, which turns one set of information into something we can see and hear, namely the needle marker which goes back and forth and the very iconic clicking sound. The atheists I've talked to, who are typically those well studied on the subject, don't go, well, we don't believe in God because we can't touch, taste or see God, but rather there is no evidence for God of any sort. The two are not comparable. The one you are pushing is a deliberately weakened form of what is typically held to. Now maybe you were of this opinion, but if so, you are by no means common or representative of atheists in general. Now the topic of evidence, or more specifically the lack thereof of God, is a relevant point considering that most people forward a God who has a tangible impact on our observable universe, whether that be through communication, the formation of miracles, or other such things. If something can influence our universe, it is subject to science. We may not yet have the tools to do so, but we can develop them. If something cannot influence the universe, then their existence is as good as non-existence, and this would also beg the question as to how you know of such entities' existence if they couldn't convey it to you in some manner. So today's video is a response to BRD's video, From Atheist to Believer Based on Evidence. Just a quick note, don't bother going to their video as they've disabled both comments and ratings. This wasn't the case when I first came across their video, so it seems that BRD got some feedback they couldn't handle. Anyway, I'll be sure to get them this video by another one of their videos, which still has comments open.
I thought at best, the stories in the Bible were just that, stories. At worst, Jesus was the best con man of all time. Maybe a magician who is able to trick people. I mean, I see magicians on TV, and I have no idea how they do their things. Maybe Jesus was just an early David Copperfield or David Blaine. I went so far as to think he might have been a time traveler from the future who could do things no one could explain.
Well, that is still far more probable than the magic sky wizard. Note we are talking relative probability here. The most likely explanation, however, is that he is just the product of stories traded from that time. There may have been a real figure at the center of those stories, there may have been several, or there may have been none. We don't know, which is perfectly acceptable as an answer, by the way. No historian has ever been able to verify that such a figure even existed. The earliest records come decades after their supposed death and focus on the emerging cult of Christus. Now, we have cults spring up now and then in an age with education and global information and communication. Cults back then are not all that peculiar and don't require some sort of David Copperfield type figure to be behind them. Even that is giving the Christ story way too much credit.
In 2018, I hit a crossroads in my life, and I decided to go on a journey to find the truth. I needed proof beyond any reasonable doubt. Like many, I started with the resurrection. If that could be proven to have happened, everything else must be true.
No, that's false. If a guy woke up 3 days after being laid to rest, that in no way validates miracles, let alone the existence of some all-knowing, all-powerful sky wizard. There are an infinite number of alternatives. Maybe he wasn't dead, but due to poor medicine from that age, was still laid to rest. Now, that may not be likely, but it is infinitely more so than the existence of magic. Maybe the figure we know as Jesus was an alien, taking the form of a human. Things got out of hand, so he pretended to die before being brought back to the ship. This time, we're talking the absurd, but Again, still more likely than Magic Sky Wizard. Maybe magic was involved, but said magic had nothing to do with your god. To assert that Guy got up 3 days after being laid to rest, therefore everything about Christianity must be true, is a non sequitur. The conclusion does not follow the premise laid out. However, all of this is irrelevant as no historian has even managed to verify such a figure did exist, let alone that there was an empty tomb.
Here are the minimal facts that are agreed upon by the most respected and well-established historical scholars. Not just believers, but skeptics as well. These common, agreed-upon facts lead to the conclusion that the resurrection happened, and credit goes to Dr. Gary Habermas for this list. I won't get into all the fine details and supporting evidence and sources in this video. I'll just lay out the minimal facts. So, here we go. First, Jesus was a real person. He actually existed. He wasn't made up.
Not true. And you've fallen at the very first hurdle in making such an assertion, which isn't true. Nobody has demonstrated that Jesus was a real person. Now, some people may say it's more probable for a cult to form around a real person than a fictitious one. And that's true. But probability is not certainty. It is likely that the character of Jesus was based on a figure or even possibly several figures rolled into one, much like King Arthur. But we can't be sure, and thus the statement you laid out just now is flat out false. Previous generations of historians have been running on a feedback loop of Jesus did exist. Why? Well, because my predecessors say Jesus did exist. But the moment you ask to see the earliest historic documents of said Jesus, they're all written decades later by people describing the cult of Christus, none of them verifying the existence of said Christus at all. So if all of your points are reliant on that, then you've already failed.
Not only was he a real person, but he died on the cross. He was crucified, and not only that, but he was dead. Third, after he died, Jesus was buried in a tomb. Fourth, after he was buried in the tomb, a few days later, his tomb was empty, and no one was ever able to produce his body. Fifth, Jesus' disciples believed that they saw Jesus resurrected from the dead. They had real experiences that they thought were appearances of the risen Jesus. Sixth, Jesus' disciples' lives were transformed as a result, and they were willing to die specifically for their faith in the resurrection message. 7. James, who is Jesus' unbelieving brother, became a Christian due to his own experience that he thought he saw the resurrected Jesus.
I just left all of those together since it'd be a little tiring to keep coming back and repeating the same thing on these points, none of which you just stated has any basis outside of the assertions laid out in the Bible. What we have here is simply the Bible is true because the Bible says it is true. These are assertions the Bible makes about Jesus, his family, and his disciples. These are not statements which have any sort of basis or foundation in reality. So currently, you're missing with every point. By the way, whilst I question the existence of the disciples as relating to people who walked with Christ, I don't doubt that there were people who died for Christianity. Yes, a lot of the martyr stories were completely fabricated, but the fact is, people die for stupid things every day. So what makes your religion special? Does the fact that the people who flew planes into the World Trade Center believed in their salvation after their sacrifice mean that Islam, not Christianity, is true? Maybe you think that's different because it was quick, not to mention an act of violence. To which I go on to add, what about the Sikh martyrs, of which the most famous three are likely the disciples of Guru Tegh Bahadur. Yes, I probably murdered that name. Mati Das was pinned between two wooden planks and sawn from head to loin. Sati Das was wrapped in cotton and burned alive. And finally, Dayal Das was placed in a cauldron that was slowly brought to boil. They went through this out of a refusal to convert from Sikhism to Islam. So tell me, What makes Christian martyrdom so much more special than all the rest? The fact is, there isn't anything special about it. It's just people dying for what they believe in, a fact that has no bearing whatsoever on the truth of said beliefs.
Eighth, Paul, who previously persecuted Christians, became a believer after he felt he saw the risen Christ.
So what? There are people who genuinely believe that they've been taken on board alien spaceships and probed, a phenomenon which increased as stories were spread and the idea began to settle in their minds. Now, is it possible that the same happened with Paul? Now you may say, no, not a chance. He was there to persecute Christians. To which I respond, it's called going native. If you don't know what going native means, it's a term used in social research, particularly forms which involve active participation. Sometimes researchers looking to study a group become so involved that they end up joining in outside of their professional capacity. But here is where it gets very interesting. It's not just researchers who are affected by this. There are numerous case studies of undercover cops who infiltrate groups, become attached to its members, and go native. Reminder, these are the people they're supposed to be bringing down. So I'm sorry to break it to you, but from a social science perspective, what happened to Paul isn't the least bit remarkable in that respect.
In the end, if someone asks me why I believe in God or believe in Jesus, well, it's because the evidence says it's true.
Great. Now I just need you to actually supply some evidence, because you've not done that at any point throughout this video. You've made a rampant string of assertions without actual historic merit, many of which have no relation to the truth of Christianity, and stated you believe because of the evidence. Okay, now could you supply said evidence whilst cutting out all of that crap about Christ apparently being real and having risen from the dead, without any basis, since that's the very thing you need evidence to support. It is not evidence itself. No wonder you had to close comments. This video is just lazy to the point that it's painful. Anyway, as mentioned at the start of the video, I'll get this video to you. As to my viewers, take care and I'll see you later. Hi there, I'd just like to say a few things here at the end of the video before you go. First, I'd like to thank everyone who's ever donated to the channel via Patreon, giving a special thanks to the following people: Hannah Banghart, Matthew Kovac, Brad R, John Schoenrock, Alexander Williams, Ernst Puna, and Daniel Martinez. Your support has ensured this channel its ability to grow over the years, and really is the only thing that manages to keep the channel afloat. I'd also like to ask that you comment down below and like this video, as well as subscribe and follow Essence of Thought on Facebook and Twitter. Please also consider following Atheist Alliance International on Facebook, an organisation dedicated to helping atheists around the globe. Any comments utilising language which insults others on the basis of perceived gender, sexuality, ethnicity or ability both mental and physical will be removed immediately, and the commenter may be blocked on the moderator's discretion. Let's keep this space one which upholds the humanist values. Thank you.